Senator James Paterson is the opposition's spokesman for cybersecurity and countering foreign interference. He reckons we're racing to catch up when it comes to the threat posed by TikTok. Did you ever think TikTok would become a big national security concern?
Not when I first heard about it. I thought, like most people, it was probably pretty harmless. But the more I learnt and the more I looked into it, the more worried I became, and I now regard it as a very serious national security problem.
So the concerns from here, the hallways of power, right out into the community?
That's right, and all around the world. A lot of countries are taking this very seriously as a national security threat.
The idea of apps tracking us, our contacts, our movements, what we purchase, what we're into, is not new. Why should we be so concerned about TikTok tracking us?
Well, when Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or these other companies track us, they are trying to sell us advertising and they're trying to make a profit. And ultimately those companies, because they're headquartered in a country like the United States, is subject to a rule of law in a liberal democracy. TikTok is different. It's subject to an authoritarian government, and not just any authoritarian government, the largest authoritarian government in the world, China. And that means we have to think about our relationship with TikTok completely differently to how we think about our relationship with other apps headquartered in Western countries.
There's no doubt Beijing has its hooks in TikTok's Chinese parent company, ByteDance. There's compelling evidence Communist Party figures have been installed in key positions in the company. But it gets worse.
So in 2017, the Chinese government enacted a national intelligence law, part of a suite of national security reforms. And what that law requires is all Chinese citizens and Chinese companies to secretly assist Chinese intelligence agencies if asked. That's a big problem for any company or individual headquartered in China and subject to these laws, particularly if they've got access to our data, because it could mean that our data is being handed over to intelligence agencies and we'd never know anything about it.
And they say they don't have a server on mainland China.
That's a kind of totally meaningless piece of information. They do have servers in places like Singapore and the United States, but their engineers working for ByteDance in China can access and have access that data stored on those servers. So really, wherever the servers are in the world, if their engineers in China can access it, which they can, it's not safe.
It's pretty obvious why people like yourself in government departments would be concerned, but for everyday Australians, how concerned should they be?
If you're an ordinary citizen, you might think that individually you're not exposed to any great risk, but there still are risks to us as a society of all of our data being collected in a mass harvesting methodology, which is favoured by the Chinese Communist Party. They know what pushes our buttons, they know what gets our attention, and that's a very powerful tool, particularly if they've got millions of eyeballs they have control over.
The US, Canada, the EU, New Zealand and the UK have all ordered a full-scale purge of the app from government devices. Here in Australia, the Home Affairs Department is set to announce its findings following a 7-month review of security risks posed by the big social media platforms, including TikTok. The expectation is that we too will outlaw its use on all government phones.
This is a company which totally lacks transparency, which has been caught out lying about how its app operates, about how its staff are ultimately directed and controlled by their parent company, about the way in which they use the data that they hold.
Should it be banned altogether?
I think that option has to be on the table. I think we have to consider that. If it's not possible to mitigate the national security risks by any other means, if banning is the only option to protect Australians, then we have to keep that on the table. And I'm disappointed that the government has already taken that off the table because the app is popular. Well, that sends a very dangerous signal. As long as you're popular, as long as you have lots of users, we won't touch you, we won't regulate you. We should not be sending that message.
As TikTok's troubles mount, scrutiny is growing. Senator James Paterson is expected to haul the company's Australian executives to Parliament as he examines how social media platforms can be weaponised for foreign interference. One of the things that TikTok has hit back with is that this is a xenophobic kind of attack on China, to be calling out TikTok's behaviour and lack of accountability.
It's got nothing at all to do with the ethnicity of the people who work for or run TikTok. I couldn't care less about that. I do care the government that they're beholden to, and whether it was the Chinese Communist Party or any other authoritarian system, we'd have to be concerned about that. It is a very powerful actor in our region, and that means we have to view this through a different light, through a national security lens. Otherwise, we're being very complacent.